All right, appears to me that I'm live. It's not working quite as planned because I can't see what I'm supposed to see here, but I guess that's what always happens on this sort of thing. So anyway, thank you for joining us. And if there's any issues at all, you can let me know in the Q&A window at the right, which is really for questions and answers. But you can let me know and should be able to see it. If you can give me a confirmation that you can see me also before I go to the slides, that would be awesome, because like I said, my thing's not quite working quite the right way, but it should be okay. As soon as I get a confirmation that we are good, then I will go ahead and begin stuff. Okay, so one person saying good. All right, we got some questions coming in already. People can see and hear me, so I'm just going to begin as if we're all set. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. This is really exciting for me to be doing this Go Vegan webinar, and not just Go Vegan, but Go Vegan the smart way, because it's something that's of course tremendously important to me. I don't talk about this sort of thing on No Meat Athlete a lot. I don't talk about the trying to want people to become vegan, because it's really just not a part of the brand's message. And honestly, those kind of things for the longest time sort of turned me off about the vegan and vegetarian movements. The people just seemed like they constantly were trying to get you to do it. So what we're doing here isn't that. I kind of put out the the call that we're going to be doing this thing for people who are interested already in doing it. So the fact that you're here means that you have some interest in becoming vegetarian and hopefully all the way vegan. So I'm pretty comfortable talking about this, and I'm very, very happy with the way that I'm going to present this information, because it's not just the way that most veganism approaches is the all-in, all-at-once method, because people are excited about spreading this and people are excited about adopting this. So often the approach is dive right in, go for it, go all the way, never eat animal products again, starting today or starting tomorrow. And as exciting and fun as that is, it's not the best way to make a change. It just isn't, unfortunately. I think that the ideal way is probably over a month or more period of time for this webinar, because it's a push, it's a challenge. We are going to try to do it over the course of a month. So that's the plan that I'm laying out. It goes over 30 days. And you can take longer if you need to. And by the time you reach the end of those 30 days, you're at a point where you've tried it out. You've experienced some days of eating first vegetarian and then vegan. And at that point, you can decide, is this for me? Do I like this? Do I want to just keep going and have this be the rest of my life or for the foreseeable future? And that's the way that it worked out for me. Or it might be that you say, this is great. I tried vegan. I tried a 30-day challenge. And actually, I did try a 30-day challenge before I was ready to go vegan. You try it, get to the end, and say, hey, this was really fun. I'm glad I did this. But I'm also really excited for the end of this challenge to go back to the way that I was. And maybe not all the way back, but part of the way back to where I was before. And then you sort of gradually approach it over the next coming years or months or whatever it is. That was the personal path that I took. I really think it's a good one. And that's what we're going to be diving into today. So I'm going to go to a slideshow. And actually, first I'm going to open a door because it is blazing hot in here. I hope this doesn't affect the sound too much. Okay, so that's fixed. All right, so I'm gonna go to the slideshow now, and let me know if there's any sort of major issues that happen when I do that, just because I'm kind of new to this webinar thing. So let's go there now. Okay, so we are in full slideshow mode here. The title of our talk, as I've talked about before, is How to Go Vegan the Smart Way. I, of course, am Matt Frazier, the founder and author of NoMeatAthlete.com. You probably know me if you're here because you've probably been reading No Meat Athlete stuff for a while. So the first thing we want to talk about is why go vegan, right? I've assumed that you have some reason that you want to be here, right? So the slide I didn't include here was the one that listed the stuff that everyone talks about, the big benefits of going vegan, right? We know those. There's first of all, your long-term health reasons. And I do have long-term health here, but there's health. That's one big piece of the three big ones that you hear about all the time. Next one is the ethical reason for animals, right? You feel bad about eating animals, think it's not right either for you or for other people, depending on where you stand there, and just decide you don't want to be part of that. That's the next part. Then, of course, there's the environmental component, right? It's not that talked about in mainstream media, but veganism is one of the very best things you can do to reduce your footprint on the environment. So I am assuming that everyone here knows all this already. That's why I'm not diving into it, not going into statistics and things like that. Those are in my book and in all over the internet. If you want to look up environmental effects of going vegan, you will find all kinds of great stuff that's really, really encouraging. What I want to focus on, what matters the most to me, because this is what my site is about, and in fact, not what matters the most to me, because really the reason I did this was the animals, the ethical thing. The fitness turned out to be a really, really nice surprise benefit of it. But as you know me, and as I talk about online, it's all about fitness and health. That's what my site is about. So that's what I'm assuming a lot of the motivations are here. The question, though, is, does it work for these things? Because often when we think about vegan diets, what the reputation it has often is that, oh, if you go vegan, then you're going to lose fitness. You can't be a marathoner if you're going to go vegan. That was my hang up for the longest time. Does it work for fitness, though? Absolutely, it does. I'm not going to say that guaranteed every single person who tries a vegan diet is going to suddenly experience the best workouts of their life, or even that going vegan is a guarantee that you're going to be performing at your best a year from now or 2 years from now. We don't really know what the best diet is, and if we did, then every pro athlete would be doing exactly that. What I can tell you, though, is that a lot of elite athletes, an increasing number, Scott Jurek, Rich Roll, Brendan Brazier, Hilary Biscay, they're trying and sticking with vegetarian and vegan diets, not just for the ethical reasons, and for some of them not at all for the ethical reasons, but because of what it does for their performance. And what it does for their performance, for the most part, what you'll hear if you talk to any of them, listen to my interviews with any of them, is it lessens their time they need to recover from workouts. Eating a whole food, plant-based diet, and when I say whole food, I mean mostly whole foods. There's still going to be some oil in there for a lot of these people. There's still going to be the athlete-type products, energy gels, things like that. But still vegan, no meat, no dairy, no eggs. They find that for them, that's what allows them to get in more workouts than the competition, because they're able to recover faster. So at their level, that means more workouts than the competition, right? Their goal is get in as many workouts as you can in a week. At our level, that's probably not the case. Perhaps for some people listening, it is. But for some of us, we don't want to work out any more per week. But we do want to show up more prepared for our next workout, no matter what fixed number of workouts we're planning on doing per week. So if I'm only doing 4 workouts per week, it's really nice to show up at the 4th one feeling as good as I did on the 1st one of the week. That's what it does for fitness. Again, there's lots and lots of things you can go much, much deeper here. We only have an hour for this webinar, so I can't go into the mechanics of how that happens, but just in a nutshell, what I think it is micronutrient density. I think that you're getting the vitamins and minerals in fewer calories than it takes to get those things, the same amounts of those things with a typical omnivorous diet. So if you can get the same amount of micronutrients, the vitamins, minerals, these really valuable things in a lesser number of total calories, that makes the digestion job easier, lets you recover better. So let's move to the next one. Does it work for weight loss? In fact, it does, for a very, very similar reason to that. You get micronutrient density without having to take in a ton of calories. And kind of the same idea here is that plant food, especially whole plant foods, meaning excluding oil if you're going to go that far, or excluding avocados, nuts, things that are very dense in calories, actually can help you lose a tremendous amount of weight very quickly. My wife just went through this exact thing. She lost 20 pounds in 6 weeks. And the reason it works, even if you're not ready to go that far yet, not ready to limit the high calorie foods like oils or nuts and avocados, is plant food in general takes up a lot of space for the amount of calories that it's packing, if that makes sense. So your stomach can feel full without you having to take in 500 or 600 or 800 calories in a meal, right? So you're going to feel full. Yes, you sometimes need to eat more frequently throughout the day so that you're not hungry all the time. But you're filling up sooner on less food, less total calories, I should say. And as a result, weight loss happens. Does it work for long-term health? This is, of the 3, I think this is the one that is the most agreed upon. And this is the one that kind of has reached into the mainstream somewhat. You hear about studies all the time that talk about the benefits of, they say vegetarian diets a lot, but I think vegan is even more so. And most people would agree with this. I think people in the vegan and vegetarian communities would agree that vegan is kind of even more than vegetarian as far as long-term health and what it does. So there's plenty of doctors in the mainstream community who are saying this. And of course, you know the ones in the vegan community, right? Dr. Furman, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Campbell, Dr. Greger. These people are writing books, articles, all kinds of things, talking about the longevity benefits of a plant-based diet, the prevention of disease, the reversal of disease in some cases. So absolutely, long-term health is a great thing. So those were all the things that you kind of expect going into a vegan diet if you had done some research on it and knew that people were having success with it. What I didn't expect personally, and what I think happens with nearly all the vegans that you hear about who make it last, were some unexpected things. You've got the energy benefit, right? So for me, this was the most noticeable thing the first time I went vegetarian, and it increased when I went vegan, was that suddenly I stopped having that after dinner feeling of just feeling completely wasted and ready for bed. Because it used to be that way. I would have dinner, go to sleep, wake up the next day, and that was it, really. By the time I was done dinner, I wanted to sit on the couch and do nothing else. As soon as I went vegetarian, this was one of the first things I started to notice. And I was skeptical. I thought, this might be just some other reason, but it has lasted since then. I've just felt more energy all the time. There's that 2:30 feeling that they talk about that really has gone away. I don't have that anymore. I feel like there's way fewer ups and downs in energy levels. It just sort of evened out. So that was one big surprise. The other ones were all a little bit less physical, kind of more in your head. Increased compassion was an unexpected one for me. I did this for compassionate reasons. I wanted not to be a part of eating animals or mistreating animals for their products, milk, eggs, things like that. So that it was driven by compassion. What I found though is because I got into this, perhaps it's from surrounding myself with people who are also into it. Perhaps it's from actually just behaving in this certain way for so long that I actually feel way more compassionate now than I did then. Not just for animals, but for other people as well. It's kind of a different sense of compassion than I ever felt before. Similarly, one of the first things I noticed when I went vegan was that, I kind of expected shopping was going to be a weird thing, going to be hard, I have to read nutrition labels. One of the first things I noticed though, the first big grocery trip I did when I went vegan was as I was standing there reading labels. And I had put this change off for a long time. I'd wanted to be vegan, thought it wouldn't work out, thought it'd be too restrictive, just didn't want to do it, but actually really wanted to do it. So when I finally made the decision, okay, it's time to do it, I'm not going to put it off anymore. When I was standing there looking at labels in the grocery store, I had this really, really strange, never before something that I'd felt sense come over me that said, it just said, this, you are doing the right thing. And I remember standing there reading the nutrition labels and feeling like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now, paying this much attention to what I'm putting in my body and paying this much attention to where it's coming from. So that was really, really nice. And perhaps the most interesting of all these, the one that's been most exciting and had the biggest impact on my life, is that it has allowed me to find my identity and embrace my weird side. And if you read the 17 weirdest things I do now that I'm vegan, that's a popular post on No Meat Athlete. If you haven't, check it out after this webinar. It's been on Huffington Post and elsewhere. Just a bunch of weird stuff I started doing once I went vegan, but it's not so weird that I was not proud of it. It just, I just kind of went this different way. I started being more minimalist, started being willing to kind of just march the beat of my own drum, do my own thing. And I think the decision to go vegan, it is a decision to do that sort of thing. It's a decision to say, I'm not doing what most other people do, and I'm okay with that. And for me, that was kind of my first exploration of that. I'd always been someone who sort of kept to myself, was afraid to stand out from the crowd. And this for me is what changed that. It's kind of what let me start to be comfortable in my own skin and let me just be who I am. So that was a really, really neat thing. Okay, so that's the motivation. And like I said, you probably have showed up motivated, but just in case you weren't, I wanted to give you some reasons why this has been such a great change for me and why I've seen it be such a good change for so many other people. So as I mentioned at the very beginning here, this approach that I like to take, and pretty much the approach that I take on everything, is about small steps. That's the way to change habits. Like I said, it's not necessarily the way that most people do. It's certainly not the way most people do. When someone makes a change, generally, they want to go cold turkey. And it kind of makes sense. I understand it. Because when we make a change, when we get excited enough to want to make a change, then by definition, we're super motivated, right? And when you're super motivated, you don't want to start with small steps and be told that a month from now or 2 months from now or 6 months from now, you're going to start getting the result that you want, right? When you want to make a change, you want to get that result overnight. We wish we could just get it overnight. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And when we try to force it to happen, what happens actually is that we do make this change and it lasts for a week, maybe 2 weeks. Maybe if you're really, really lucky and you're really good and you do a lot of other things right, then maybe it lasts for a month. Rarely, though, do you absolutely change your lifestyle overnight and have it become just a new trajectory for your life. I know this is sort of the Hollywood story that we think about, the lightning bolt flash, and suddenly we've changed and our whole life is now different. And more than that, it's easy to make a change after that. Unfortunately, it just doesn't really work that way. So what happens, especially in this particular case of going vegan, if you try to just overnight go vegan, first of all, you're shocking your body. You're changing something drastically about the way you've been eating before, depending on where you're coming from, whether it's from vegetarian or whether it's from omnivore, but a healthy sort of way, or whether it's from standard American diet. If you suddenly go whole food vegan from that, you're creating a drastic change to your body. It's more fiber, it's less of certain nutrients, more of others, and it's just not something that's going to be a comfortable transition at all. But more than that, it's how much it changes your lifestyle. So what happens when you go vegan, all these unexpected things happen. The idea of people start asking you about it, right? You show up at the first family occasion, family dinner about it. You've got to deal with that. You go out to eat with friends the first weekend you're vegan at a restaurant or at a bar, which is even worse because you have a few beers if you drink. And this is what happened to me in my first attempt to go vegetarian. A couple days after I made this decision to go cold turkey vegetarian, went out to a bar with some friends, had a couple drinks, got hungry, as often happens when you drink beer or any other alcohol, and looked at the menu, couldn't find anything that I wanted on there, and really nothing that I could eat. I didn't know how to order off a menu, how to order vegetarian when there weren't any clear vegetarian options on there. So when that happened, and also under the influence of 2 beers, I said, well, that was a fun trial going vegetarian, but I guess it's not for me. And I got a chicken sandwich or whatever I got, and that was it. So it's very, very hard. I'm not saying that you won't survive things like that. Maybe you'll have a little more willpower than I did in that case. But what happens often is you start having instances like that over and over because you're not prepared. You haven't had the chance to practice on kind of intermediate steps. So you might last through one of those. Maybe you last through a second one. It's a little bit harder. A third time, something like that comes along and you really stick to it. You're wanting to do this, but each time that's happening, your willpower is draining. And that's a known thing. Willpower is a depletable resource. It's not something that you have an infinite supply of. It runs out. It's kind of like a muscle in the gym. It runs out, and then it needs an amount of time to recover before it can be useful again. So if too many instances come up, eventually you're going to say, well, I've tried really hard. I stuck it out for a while, but this is too hard. I give up. So that's kind of what happens with the cold turkey approach. Now with small steps, you've got something much different. What happens with small steps where you take it in phases, and you'll see in just a minute the actual plan that we're going to use here that I suggest you use. First, if you're going from omnivore to vegan, I'll give you just a glance at it really quick. If you're going from omnivore to vegan, you would first remove the 4-legged animals and do that for a full week. In fact, you could do it much longer if you wanted, but for the sake of the challenge, we're going to do each of these phases for 1 week. By the end of the challenge, as I said, you may get there and say, this is really good. I'm loving how I feel, but I also feel like I'm not quite there yet, and I need to go back, and I'm going to take 2 weeks each time or something like that. But you'll have learned the procedure, and in the best case, you'll be happy to go, and you won't need to go back and do that sort of thing. Let me return to this, what I was talking about before. But when you first say remove 4-legged animals from your diet, so basically in this first week, you'd be giving up beef, giving up pigs, cows and pigs. You're no longer eating those foods, but you've still got a tremendous amount of meat on the menu. And if you're an omnivore going into this for the first time, that's a pretty nice thing to have the ability to still order chicken or fish out at a restaurant, because it's not that different from what you've been doing. Yes, you've had the entire restaurant menu to look at in the past. Now you've got half the menu. That's not that much different, and it's not that much harder to do. Similar goes for planning, cooking meals. You've got less choices now, so when you look through your cookbook, all of a sudden the beef meals you're not looking at anymore, or you're looking at them kind of in a different way, thinking, how will this go if I put chicken in it instead of beef? A lot of times you might find meals that work perfectly well that way. Like I said, there's the restaurant menu. You learn how to do that in different ways. Really, really important that a lot of people overlook is you learn how to talk about your diet. So when a friend comes along and says, hey, what are you doing? Or when you're out at the bar with friends or the restaurant with friends, and first of all, they're not going to notice that first week that you're getting chicken, because people get chicken sometimes. Maybe the next week when you're down to fish as your only remaining meat, maybe they'll say, hey, I haven't seen you order fish before. What are you doing? It's a lot easier for a lot of people to not say, oh, I'm vegetarian now, or oh, I'm vegan now. Didn't I tell you that? Or didn't you know that? For a lot of people, that's sort of embarrassing. I can understand why. When I started this, it was something I was happy to share about it on my blog. But when I would see family who had no idea I was doing this, or see friends who hadn't seen it in a while, to me, it was just a weird thing because this was so foreign to me. And like I said, I wasn't that comfortable doing new and different things back then. So it was way, way easier for me to say, well, I'm trying out this diet, and right now it's just fish. I can still eat plenty of fish, and I can eat cheese and eggs and all that. So it's not vegan or even close to that. It's not even vegetarian, but I'm trying it out, eating fish, and it's working really good. I feel well. I'm very energetic. That's what the conversation was. Hopefully not quite as backing off of it as that made it sound, but you know, it's nice to not have to say, oh, I'm vegan, because when you say that, it kind of, it throws people, especially if they've known you for a long time and never even heard this. Or you tell a restaurant waiter that, a lot of times, if you're not familiar with how to do it, it turns people off, and it changes the conversation, feels weird, feels awkward. For some people who are totally into the protest side of it and the go vegan for the animals and be as visible as possible, I understand that's not their approach. And if that's you, this probably isn't for you at all. I mean, my approach is not going to be the one that you want to take, and you're probably not a No Meat Athlete fan if you're, you know, that militant and in this for the protesting and the visible protest. I just think it's so much easier to get used to it. And now, you know, now when in a restaurant, I say that I'm vegan. I'm very proud to say that. I'm not embarrassed of it at all. But it took me years to actually get good at kind of being able to feel out people and understand how to work that into a conversation without feeling like I was offending people, without feeling like I was the odd one at the table who was making it difficult and making the waiter hate our table, et cetera, et cetera. These were real fears of mine, and I'm guessing for some of you, they're real fears of yours too. So when you go small steps at a time, you get better and better at this. Like I said, it's a challenge approach. You can just say it's a challenge that you're doing, which is exactly what it is, and it all works out great. Finally, there's the physical thing that you can enjoy and digest new foods while removing these old ones. Partly that's the digestion is what I mentioned before. Your body's got to actually adjust to stuff, or else you're going to be in for a little bit of a rough ride. And also your taste buds. Anyone who's eaten this way for a while will tell you that your taste buds absolutely do change. I know it seems right now like you could never give up some certain food, or the thought of, for me, it was buffalo wings. Never having buffalo wings just was unbearable. I couldn't think about it. But now I don't think about that anymore. And sure, I had some cravings for a little while. I learned how to deal with them over time, and I can share some of those strategies with you. But those change. I don't have that anymore. I crave whole foods now. I crave fruits and vegetables and nuts and grains, and I think they're delicious. You can make delicious foods out of those. And not that all vegan food has to be that way. There are certainly much more decadent and indulgent forms of vegan food, and now and then I have those. But your taste buds do change. You learn to enjoy different things. And again, that's a small step thing. If you go cold turkey, if you just dive right into it, that doesn't happen. And 2 weeks into this challenge, you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't like this food I'm eating because it's all so new and foreign and weird to me. And I just want to go back and have this or this or this. With the small steps, you don't get that, right? Because you've only removed tiny parts at a time. You're still eating in a way that's very familiar to the way you've eaten all before this. And that's really, really works in your favor. So as I say here, all this serves to preserve your willpower while the habit forms. So now the willpower is not getting drained because you're eating meals, you're planning meals, you're going to restaurants, and behaving in ways that were very, very similar to the way you did things before, but you are moving along this path slowly but surely. And that's what being part of a challenge like this does. If you're going to be in it with everyone else, then it feels good to move along that path slowly, but to know you're actually doing it and keeping up with it. Okay, so here's the plan I've been referring to. There are two different plans here. The first one is the omnivore to vegan plan. I do suspect there are a lot of people on this webinar who are already vegetarian and want to go vegan from there. So I've got another plan for them, or for you, I should say, but we'll get there in just a minute. So the way this works is just each week you you basically reduce the number of legs on the animals you're eating. So the first week, and I suggest that you start on Monday. That's this coming Monday. You've got a few days between now and then to plan. I'll send you a few more resources over the next few days, but getting planned in advance is good. Then you got Monday is when you get rid of the four-legged animals from your diet. I urge you this entire time, don't think I can never again eat beef or pork if that's important to you. That sort of thought is poison to any sort of long-term goal that you might have. Think of this as a 30-day challenge. That's what it is, a 30-day thing. It's a push. Yes, there are going to be some times when maybe you want the beef or maybe you want the bacon that someone else is having. I'm not saying you're not going to have periods that are like that, where you want something that you used to be able to have and are now choosing not to. But when you've got an end date here, and we have Sunday, September 20th, when you've got an end date, then you can say, all I've got to do is make it to then. And then if I want, I'm allowed to have this again. Very often, I think you won't want that when you actually get there, because your taste will change and you'll feel really, really good about how things are going. That's exactly what happened to me. But you know in your head that that option is there, that you can just make it more days. That prevents you from quitting. It's a huge, huge factor. Have an end date to the challenge. And then when you get there, assess if you want to keep going. All right, and then it's straightforward from there. Week 2, you remove the two-legged animals from your diet. So after you're left with birds, basically, you're left with birds and fish after week 1 or during week 1. Week 2, on Monday, you cut out the two-legged animals. So on week 2, now you're only eating fish as your only meat. You can still mix in vegetarian meals or vegan meals whenever you want here. No one's saying you have to keep eating chicken, you have to keep eating fish and that. But I'm urging you, remove those at a minimum and do a little bit more if you want. But I urge you not to do too much. I urge you not to go all the way right away for the reasons I've talked about a lot of times. All right, so 2 weeks have gone by. Now it's the 3rd week. Now you are going officially vegetarian on Monday, September 7th. So at that point, you are now eating vegetarian meals. Hopefully they won't be your first vegetarian meals, because you'll have had a few mixed in the previous weeks. But you're a vegetarian. And then in the final week of this 30-day challenge, you're removing all animal products. That's eggs, dairy, honey for most people. There aren't too many other animal products that most people eat that aren't actually animals. Now, this is one of the harder steps. That's another thing about this progression, is that we're doing steps that they become progressively hard, but you're building the muscle each week here. So by the time you get to this last week, you're used to making changes. First of all, you've learned, you now have a bit of knowledge that you've built all this stuff upon, and your willpower is growing, right? You haven't had to exercise it too much. You've successfully made changes. You've built this habit, and now you're good at making change. So I am having some faith in you that you can remove all these animal products for 1 week and get to the end of the challenge. If you do that successfully, you'll be at the end of the challenge. You'll have been vegan for an entire week, vegetarian for an entire 2 weeks, and you won't have eaten any beef or pork in 3 weeks. So that's that's a huge step. And like I said, when you get to that end, it doesn't mean you're never going to go back, or you can't go back. That's the reason we have a challenge. You get 30 days into it. You decide at that point whether or not this is great for you, and I hope that it will be, and I suspect that for most people it will be. Or you can say, hey, I made it this far. I'm not quite ready to do this last step yet, so I'm going to go back to vegetarian, and I'm going to be there for a month. And when it becomes, say, October 20th, then I'm going to try vegan again, or whatever you decide, and I can help you with those sort of decisions later on. Okay, so here's the alternative plan if you're already vegetarian, but you want to go vegan. And here I've just broken up that last week for the omnivore to vegan plan, broken that into 4 different parts. So remove eggs would be the easiest step, I think, for most people. Yeah, you're removing some baked goods, some cakes and things like that you might enjoy, but you're not removing cheese yet. And cheese is the hardest one, which is why in week 2, I have you removing all dairy, but leaving the cheese in there, right? So you're still eating cheese, but you're no longer drinking milk. You're no longer pouring regular milk on cereal. You start using almond milk. You start using soy milk. You've experimented now with egg replacers if you wanted before. Finally, in week 3, we start to attack the cheese a little bit, because I know cheese is a hang up for a lot of people about going vegan. Week 3, remove all the cheese except for 2 days per week. So you can still have it on 2 days, and I'll let you decide what 2 days you want those to be. I would suggest you choose them in advance, and you say, these are going to be the days when I eat cheese, rather than saying, oh, it's Tuesday and now I want cheese, so I'm going to have that. Instead, pick the days ahead of time. You can look at what kind of plans you have. Maybe you're going out. Maybe you've got a football game you're going to watch. I don't know. But keep it in there for just 2 days that 1 week. And then finally in week 4, you go all the way. You experience a completely vegan week. And by the end, just like in the other plan, you've been vegan for a week, and you decide, is this something I want to keep going with because I feel great? Or do I need to go back to a certain phase and then spend longer in each phase from there? So that's the overview of my approach to making these changes. And by the way, I haven't really shared these sort of things anywhere else before. I've written some general posts about how to go vegetarian, how to go vegan, but I really haven't shared many of these precise sort of approaches except with our academy members, and they've been having some success with this, so I wanted to take it out to everybody. Okay, so there are some common concerns and things to talk about here. We've got these, and what I'm going to do, let's see, we're 30 minutes in, so we've got another 20 minutes or so before we open up to questions. So I'm going to try to hit on each of these, just spend a few minutes on each of these, and then we'll move on to the next stuff. So protein is the big one, right? I mean, certainly there's other nutrition aspects, but everyone wants to know, where do you get your protein, right? You hear it all the time. You hear it so much that it's become a joke among vegans. And even among vegetarians, you hear, where do you get your protein? Where do you get your protein? Especially as an athlete, it comes up all the time. The first thing I will say about protein is you don't need nearly as much protein as people think. I weigh about 140 pounds. Given day, I'm probably getting 50 grams of protein, not that much, around a third of a gram of protein per pound of body weight per day, I think is a reasonable place to start. You can get way more precise than that, and the USDA provides guidelines if you want to be way more precise and figure out exactly what you're supposed to get every day. But I don't know that you need to get that specific, and it's going to be in the neighborhood of what I said. Instead, the way I think about it is percentages. I try to get around 12 to 15% of my calories from protein. And by the way, that seems very low, I know. Several of the top vegan doctors, like Dr. Campbell, who wrote the China study, recommend more like 10% protein or 10 to 12% protein. And what this is percentage of total calories that come from protein. These numbers, by the way, they're very, very easy to hit. It's not at all hard to hit 12 to 15% of protein. In fact, one of the great surprises to me when I did this was looking at a box of whole wheat pasta. We think of pasta as the carbohydrate food that must have no protein in it at all. You look at the box of whole wheat pasta, do the math, and you figure out that it has exactly 15% of its calories coming from protein. So this food that's always been the carbohydrate food actually is a good protein source. Turns out there are lots and lots of other foods that are good protein sources in the same way. Beans, nuts, even it turns out many, many vegetables actually have a high amount of protein in them. Like I said before, they're not calorically dense, so you can't get all your protein or all your calories from kale or broccoli. But when you do eat those, when you eat those things at every meal or different ones at every meal, but always whole foods, that's the theme, you're actually getting protein all the time. So get some sort of good protein source in all your meals, and you will get somewhere near between the 10 and 15% or 12 and 15% right where you need to be. I don't even think you need protein powder. I personally don't take protein powder anymore. I know people assume that a vegan athlete must just eat protein powder all the time. But as it turned out, when I was training for my 100-miler, I ran out of it and just didn't buy more kind of out of laziness. And it's now been 2 years and I'm totally fine, haven't had any protein issues at all. I'm not saying you shouldn't eat protein powder or use protein powder, especially at the beginning. It can be a really, really nice confidence booster. But you don't need that much. You don't need just that much. I don't think it's really worth obsessing over. And I don't think you need protein powder. It's not worth the money to me. For some people it is. For some people it'll be a convenience food. That's fine if you want to do that. But I think you can get it in healthier ways. So we can go into more protein in the Q&A if you want. I am saving some time at the end of this for Q&A. I know protein's a big concern for a lot of people, so I don't want to just brush it off. But I want to answer specific questions if you actually have those, rather than talking for 20 minutes about it and trying to hit all the answers. All right, cravings. What do you do about cravings? I said before that there are ways to deal with them. I didn't say that they're not going to happen. Cravings do come up, absolutely. Your body's used to eating one way for a long time, and suddenly you change that. Even though we're changing in small steps, so we're going to minimize it, the cravings are still going to happen. The best thing that I think you can do for dealing with cravings, first of all, is mindfulness. Actually notice that you are craving something rather than just kind of responding without even thinking and going and eating whatever it is you're craving. But notice it, notice how you're feeling. Notice what happens if you don't indulge that craving and you just sort of pay attention to it and look at it and observe that you are hungry and thinking about, what is this signal? What is it really telling me? When you do that, many times these cravings pass and then it'll come up later, but you don't have to indulge it every single time. If it does keep coming up though, and sometimes they will, for me, the buffalo chicken wings thing absolutely did keep coming up over and over. What I did was let myself eat food that wasn't that healthy, but was still on the diet I wanted to be eating as far as vegetarian or vegan goes. So in the case of buffalo chicken wings, when I wanted that, let's say I would go out with friends to watch a football game. And in that environment, I was used to eating chicken wings. I thought that was what you did in that environment. And the idea of not having that just seemed very, very bad to me, right? My tongue just started craving that when I got to the bar and started watching the football game with friends and they all got wings. So what I learned to do was get some hot sauce and some French fries, dump the hot sauce on the French fries and eat it, right? It's not the same experience. I'm not saying that it is, but 10 minutes later, when you are stuffed from eating French fries with hot sauce on them and you've eaten a whole plate of French fries, trust me, you don't want buffalo chicken wings anymore. You have served that craving. You've met what it wanted. It wanted spicy and it wanted fried. You gave it that, not the same way that you were used to, and not in a healthy way. I'm not at all saying that this is healthy by any means. However, when you're making a change like this, I think it's okay. It's a short-term thing. It's a challenge. It's okay when these cravings come up. Let's say one comes up once or twice per week. You've got a major craving. If you indulge that and eat a plate of French fries or who knows, a junk food, kind of a vegan fake meat barbecue sandwich, perhaps, if barbecue is your thing. Sure, I wouldn't say have that usually, but when you're transitioning, by all means, go for it, because it lets you experience some of the feelings that you had before, lets you feel like, you start to think, hey, this actually is doable. I could keep having this for a year if I had to, and I'd be fine. And it lets you move closer to this diet that you want to eat. You're kind of making an investment, right? You're eating something that's not the healthiest thing, but you're doing it so that you can know you stayed on the path. And then a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, 6 months or a year from now, when you're 100% vegan, you're eating healthier than you ever have, still maybe with minor indulgences now and then, the ones you made at the beginning, eating the plate of French fries with hot sauce on it, this meal that might seem disgusting in any other time, was totally worth it. It was totally worth being unhealthy like that for 1 meal or 2 meals or whatever it was, because now you're a year or 2 years or whatever down the road, you're on a new path now, and it's worth it if it takes a little bit of junk food to get there. So what I mean by junk food, the fake meats, right? The hot dogs. When you go to a barbecue or a grill out or whatever it is, Labor Day coming up, you can bring the vegan hot dogs or the vegan sausages. They're not healthy for you. No one's saying that they are, but they get the job done, and you don't feel like, wow, I'm totally missing out on this experience because I decided to go vegan. It gets done. It's not that different from a regular hot dog or a regular sausage, and you're happy, and the time goes by, you fill up, and once you're full, you don't want that food anymore. Nobody wants more food when they're stuffed. Nothing seems good then, and it works out. All right, meal planning, recipes, cooking. These are major concerns for a lot of people. First of all, you've got to cook. There's no getting around that, unless you're going to spend a lot of money on meal plan services that will deliver you the food. For some people, that's an option. Most people, I'm assuming, are not going to be doing that. You're going to be cooking your own food. That's part of health. You got to learn to cook, but it doesn't have to be fancy. As I've gone further and further down this path of healthy eating, my meals have gotten really, really simple. A lot of times it's pasta with beans and a red sauce or some other kind of sauce and some veggies thrown in there. Snacks are fruit, vegetables dipped in hummus, things that really don't take any kind of preparation at all. So in fact, my amount of time in the kitchen is way, way less than it used to be before I was vegan or vegetarian. It's not going to be that way for everyone, but for you at first, really this is almost a non-issue because of this small steps approach, right? So it's not that because you're embarking on a 30-day change to go vegan or a challenge to go vegan, it's not that suddenly Monday comes and you're like, oh my gosh, where am I going to find 7 vegan meals this week? No, you don't have to do that, because all you have to do is look in your regular cookbooks, whatever your normal sources of food are, look there and find the recipes that first week that don't have beef or pork in them, right? Or find the ones that do, but substitute chicken or fish or even tofu or something else if you want to go fully vegetarian and try a vegetarian recipe now and then. But this becomes a non-issue. You don't suddenly have to learn how to cook a new way. After that first week, now you're a little bit more limited. But now you've still got those same cookbooks. You can still eat shrimp. You can still eat fish. You can still eat those chicken dishes that with now instead of grilled chicken, you serve them with shrimp, right? Or you can order things that way at restaurants. Lots and lots of ways to slowly make changes without having to suddenly immerse yourself in this new world of recipes, new world of cooking. By the way, that's a really, really exciting thing, that there is this new world of restaurants, recipes, blogs, websites, foods to try that you've never tried before. That's really exciting and ends up being a thing that's on your side when you get into it. It helps you stick with it because it's fun and it's new and it's interesting and it's delicious. But at first, having to just dive into that suddenly is really difficult. So this small steps approach really handles a lot of that for you. Finally, there's the social aspects. I mentioned this a lot about how to deal with it. My personal approach, my favorite way to deal with social aspects is to just be shockingly low-key about your diet. People expect, when they hear that you're vegan or they hear that you're vegetarian, they expect you to be pushy and preachy and militant and totally uncompromising. I'm not saying you're not going to be some of those things. Maybe some people want to be totally uncompromising, want to be preachy, even if, I don't know if anybody wants to be preachy, but maybe people do. But people expect that. So I think when you can be the guy who can joke along with them, can, pose interesting questions back to people, can kind of agree with them that, yeah, this is really difficult to go camping and be vegan, and laugh that you brought along the veggie dogs. And I mean, the jokes are going to happen. So I think it's way, way easier to kind of joke along with them and then spin it in a different direction maybe, than suddenly putting up walls and causing this rift right away and letting people know that you are not interested in talking to them about food unless it's pro-vegan talk. I just think that's not the way that most people like to engage with people. So I know this isn't for everyone. This has been my approach though, and it's worked really well. Just to be low key, to be the person that is the most normal vegan they've ever met. for a lot of people. And I think I am that for a lot of people. I think a lot of people who read No Meat Athlete are that for their friends. And I think it's a really useful way to be about things. Other things you can do, be really, really open about things. If you're going to a family dinner, don't try to go there and hide the fact that you're vegetarian. Tell them you're doing a 30-day thing where, you can say it's this crazy thing you're doing and you're trying it and you've only got 2 weeks left. And so far it's been good, but you've only got 2 weeks left and then you're done this challenge. I mean, that's what I did. Just do that stuff to get by for a while. It just makes things easier. It greases the wheels. Like I said, you can take another approach. This one's not going to be for everyone, but for me, this made it really, really easy. So be open about it. Also, be really, really eager to prepare your own stuff and kind of go over the top with willingness to adapt or put in the effort to do stuff. So if you're going to dinner at someone's house, rather than telling them, hey, I'm vegan, you need to cook a vegan meal for me, but thank you for the invitation, and yes, I'll be there, but make it vegan. I say, yes, I'll be there, but I don't know if you know this, you probably do, that I don't eat animal products. So what I can do is bring this dish and I'll make enough for everybody, and I'll just eat mostly that and rolls and salad and whatever else. And I'll be happy to share this dish with everyone else. But just kind of be that person. And many times you're going to be shocked by the people who want to go over the top to help you when you kind of come at it from that angle. You'll find people who are your greatest allies in this, who are family people who will always go and make something that you can eat because they're interested in it. And a lot of I've seen it happen before where people will do that, and then that person who's really interested in this diet, really interested in helping out, will themselves eventually become vegan thanks to the inspiration of the person that they were cooking for in the beginning. So that's how I do social stuff. I think these are concerns. They happen. I'm not saying none of this, that these things aren't going to come up and aren't going to be difficult situations. However, by actually knowing about them in advance, having strategies in advance, I think you're way, way more likely to stick with it than if you just dive into this thing without knowing anything, without taking small steps, and don't really know what to expect. Any one of these things can throw somebody off and make them say, hey, this isn't for me. I can't do this anymore. I give up. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So actionable stuff. You've got the schedule. And I wanted to make this as actionable as possible so that you can actually take this, use it, and go vegan with it. And just go vegan for 30 days or reach the end of a 30-day challenge, at which point you will have been vegan for an entire week, potentially more if you're moving faster. And I want this to be actionable. I want to give you everything, way more information than I had when I first went vegan. So here's the nitty-gritty stuff you can do before Monday comes around, when, if you're following the outline that I laid out here, you'll be giving up beef and pork if you are going the omnivore to vegan plan, or if you're already vegetarian, where you'll be giving up eggs during that first week. Before then, though, before Monday rolls around, there are things you can do that will drastically increase your chances of success. Number one, actually make a commitment to yourself. And if you write this down, it's tremendously more powerful than just saying it in your head and not telling anybody else. So write down what you're going to do. Write down that I'm going to complete a 30-day transition to a vegan diet. And when I get there, I'll decide if it's working. And if it's not, I'll do this. And if it is, I'll do this. Right? So just write it down somewhere. If you have any kind of journal, that's perfect. If you want to put it on a screensaver, that's good. If you want to put it in a Google Doc, that's good. You could put it on Facebook, although that's kind of number 3 here, create accountability. But tell other people that's totally fine if you want to do that. But mainly write it down. Write it down somewhere where you will see it. Put it on a little Post-it note by your bed if that's what it takes. But put it in a place where you'll see it. And when you look at it, you'll remind yourself that you actually made a commitment, not necessarily to other people, but you made a real, actual commitment to yourself, that you were going to follow a program that someone suggested with very small steps, 1 week at a time, steps that were very doable when you look at them. And you're going to stick with it for 30 days. And when you get there, you'll decide whether or not you want to keep going. Number 2, and this is one that a lot of people skip. Figure out what your reasons why are. I suggest you write these down as well. These are going to be a little bit longer. These you could take an entire paragraph or 2 for any reason. So if one of your reasons is you want to be around when your daughter gets married and you want to be that healthy, or you want to be old enough to play with your great grandkids on the living room carpet and roll around with them and run around and be the active great grandfather that few people ever have. Whatever is your big motivating thing. Maybe it's animals. Maybe you just are sick. Maybe you've watched a documentary like Earthlings and you are disgusted by how our culture treats animals. That's one you can get very, very passionate about. You could write pages about that if you're really into it. And if you're having trouble coming up with one of these reasons, or if you're having trouble coming up with really strong reasons why this means a lot to you, then you can actually do research and go deeper into it. Watch a documentary like Earthlings if the animals thing motivates you. If it's the environment that motivates you, look up the statistics about veganism and what it can do for the environment. But actually immerse yourself, or go volunteer at a farm sanctuary. I mean, there's not a lot of time between now and Monday, but once you've started the challenge, do something like that. And you can really, really increase the intensity of your reasons why. That's only going to help you. All right, number 3, create accountability. And I put this one in bold because it's really, really important. You don't want to be the only one who knows that you're doing this. First of all, it's a bad idea for practical reasons. If you're trying to be the only one doing this, and suddenly, if you're the cook in your house, and suddenly people say, "Hey, what happened to the beef in our meals?" And then, "What happened to the chicken in our meals?" And then, "Hey, why are we vegan now?" That's weird. You don't want to do that. That's not going to help. It's not going to help them adopt the diet. You want to let people know what you're doing. Like I said, you want to be open with family, with friends. You're not trying to keep this a secret. You can downplay it if you want. You can talk about it being just a 30-day challenge, but don't keep it a secret. More than that, though, you want to recruit people who will not let you fail. We will do way more for other people often than we will for ourselves. And you want to put that to work here. You want to put to work this fear of humiliation that a lot of people have. So often we're afraid to announce a new thing that we're doing, like marathon training, or in this case, trying out a vegan diet. We're afraid to announce that because we think, what if we fail? How foolish would we look? But think about the flip side. What happens when you just get the guts and put it out there? It takes 5 minutes to go tell somebody, or put it on Facebook, or even start a blog about it. It takes 5 minutes nowadays. It takes such a short time to do that. And when you do that, suddenly you're making this fear of failure not something that's holding you back and preventing you from trying something out. But now that you've put it out there and just, went through 5 minutes of rapid heartbeat while you told someone about this. Once it's out there, though, now that fear of failure there's no hiding from this anymore. It's out there. Now you've got to do it, or else you are going to look foolish. This is a crucial distinction that I think people who achieve things in their lives, and I don't mean just like success, financial success, people who get stuff done, people who do unique things, they understand this. Put fear to work for you rather than having it, keep you down all the time. So that's what creating accountability is all about. Facebook, Twitter, start a blog, get friends, get a real life partner who's going to do this with you. Get your spouse or the person you live with to be on board with you if you can. Maybe they have a different change they want to make and they're not going to go vegan for 30 days, but instead they're going to try, who knows, their weight loss diet or whatever it is that they want to try. But go for it and be each other's partner, keep each other accountable, check in every day or every week, which brings me to number 4, which is another one I bolded because it's really, really important and a lot of people skip it. And that's schedule a weekly check-in just with yourself. If you've got an accountability partner who you can check in with, that's all the better. But mainly what you want this for is for yourself. So I suggest you do it on Sundays. And basically what you do in this time is you say, okay, this past week, how did I do with what I said I was going to do? So at the end of the first week, when you sit down for this weekly check-in, you've blocked off 10 minutes for it. It's all you need. Even 5 minutes would work. You sit down and you say, okay, how did this week go when I said I was going to only eat chicken and no longer beef or pork? You might write down on the sheet of paper, and by the way, have a little journal or something, or a Google Doc that is your little habit plan document that you're using to check in all the time. So this is all in one place. And say, okay, on this day, I really, really wanted, beef tips. So I went and found the Gardein beef tips in the grocery store. And I know they're not the healthiest thing, but I ate them and they were totally vegan. So I did wonderfully well here. So congratulations to me, pat on the back. Maybe it also says, there was this one morning when I really wanted bacon and someone was making it and I had the tiniest piece of it and it was delicious and I wish I wouldn't have done it, but I did. Fine, write it down in your journal, right? This is way different from perfectionism where we say, oh, I failed once, so therefore I'm done and I failed. We don't want that. This is small steps. If you make little mistakes like that, it's fine because you've got this weekly check-in where you come back and say, okay, here's what happened. It shouldn't have happened, but it did. I understand what I was thinking. I understand why this happened. What can I do in the future that will change this situation next time? How can I be ready so that this doesn't happen again? If you did nothing else here, even if you didn't even follow a schedule at all, but you had a weekly check-in period where you said, how am I doing on my transition to a vegan diet? You would become vegan faster than you probably think is possible, right? If you could just keep that one weekly appointment with yourself, assuming that becoming vegan was a goal of yours. Don't skip out on this one. Have that weekly check-in session. It's really hard to do, I know, when there's nobody else who's holding you to it. Use your accountability for that. Tell your spouse or whoever else that these 10 minutes on Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening are yours for this. But make sure it's a real thing. It seems like something that's easy to skip, and I know because I've skipped these things before when I've set them for myself. But of all the things here, this is the most important. Have that weekly check-in with yourself and just don't miss it. Last thing you can do before we start, before Monday rolls around, is have meals ready to go. What you don't want is Monday to happen and you say, okay, this is the day I'm supposed to stop eating beef and pork. What am I going to eat today? Right? You don't want that. It's quite possible you'd be fine. You could figure out all kinds of fast food options. That's one of the great benefits of a small steps plan. Whatever you've got planned for dinner or whoever in your house cooks for dinner, you could probably get them to adapt something very quickly and say, hey, I'm not going to eat the beef in this tonight. Can you make me a version with chicken? Maybe, depending on how the relationship is, that might fly. But if you can be planning in advance, it just makes it so much easier. Figure out what you're going to eat. And this isn't a big time consuming thing. All it is open up a cookbook you like, or think of the meals that you eat now and then and that you like that don't have beef or pork in them, and have a little list of them. Just write them down on a list. Write down 10 things that you really like and pick 7 of them or 5 of them if you're going to go out at all that will be your dinners this week. And just figure out what they are. I'm not saying you need to get the groceries for them. If you can, that's great, especially if you can do it for the first few days. You don't need to suddenly start drinking smoothies if you've never done that before, right? Because we're small steps. You're changing little bits. You're just removing the beef and pork that first week. I know I keep using that one example, but that's where we're starting. So it's designed not to be that difficult. In other words, you don't need a gigantic planning session. Yes, what the 5 things I've listed here are crucial. Do them. But that's the planning you need. You don't need this huge thing that says Monday there's this drastic change happening, because it's not that big a change, honestly. Okay, so that's what you need to start. Really, this is way more, like I said, than I knew when I made this change. So I've given you a lot of stuff here. This next part I'm going to talk about is an opportunity to go further. But what you have so far, like I said, I would love it for people to go vegan. Of course, I don't talk about it on my website that much because I'm not trying to push that agenda. I don't want people to, I'm happy to give tools. I just don't want to be someone who's out there trying to get people all the time to go vegan. I don't think my site would work that way. But with this webinar, that's my hope. I hope that everyone who stops here and doesn't go on with this next part that I'm going to tell you about, I hope that you have the very best of luck going vegan. That's why I've given this so much information. And honestly, you have what you need to do it. Now, what I want you to ask yourself, though, is why did you show up tonight? Right? I'm not sure what actually did make you show up tonight, but I'm guessing that it's something like you've tried this in the past and couldn't quite get it to work, right? Maybe you tried it for a week and then, like I did in the early days, found that it just wasn't really comfortable and you couldn't make it last. Maybe you're already vegetarian. You've wanted to be vegan for a really long time. This was also me. I was vegetarian for a long time, 2 years, in fact, before I could finally say, yes, I'm ready to go vegan. Quite possible that you're not vegetarian, not vegan, but you consider yourself almost both of them, right? I know there are a lot of people who read No Meat Athlete who now and then will eat seafood, now and then they'll eat chicken, but they also eat very little dairy products. So they're like almost vegan and almost vegetarian without being either one of those. What I have to offer you here is the chance to take one of those, one of these situations or another situation, and have a group that we're going to say, okay, go. And I mentioned the Sunday night check-ins. Have someone to actually check in with Sunday night. And that'd be me with a live webinar that we'll do every single Sunday night during this challenge, 4 of them total. There's a saying, I wrote this in a blog post today, actually, when we put out a podcast. And the saying is that the important things are very, very easy to do. Many of them are very easy to do, but they're also really, really easy not to do, or easy to not do. And I think for a lot of people who have wanted to be vegan for a long time, or just wanted to experience what it was like for a long time, it's something that's been easy to do, right? Because I outlined these steps. These are not hard steps to do, certainly to get a challenge in and just go for 30 days along this progression. It's not hard to do that, but it's also very easy not to do that. It's very easy to put it off and say, well, I'll do that next month, or I'll do that when this and this gets done and when this gets lined. As you know, you've heard this 100 times, there's never going to be a perfect time to do anything. And that's what this opportunity is. It's this time to have a big accountability group, and we're going to have that as well, that say, we're all doing this at once, we're going in this thing together, And this is the day we're starting. We're starting on this very day, and suddenly there's all this activity in your Facebook group, and you've got a webinar to watch, and a week later it's time to check in with that. And all during the week you've gotten this Facebook accountability, you've connected with people. So let me just describe what we're doing here. This is the actual 30-day Go Vegan Challenge. It's the one that I'm kind of walking you through, doing with you, along with anyone else who joins. And for 30 days, we're going to go through these stages that I've outlined together, whether you're on that omnivore to vegan path or whether you're on the vegetarian to vegan path. As I said, each Sunday night, we're going to do a Q&A and webinar. So it'll be something like this, where it's a long presentation about a certain topic, probably going to be about lots of topics, and in just a second I'll talk about that, but the topics that you in particular need to know about, or that you're telling me you want to hear more about. And then it's going to end with Q&A, where you've got chances to ask your questions, talk about maybe where you're slipping up, any concerns you have about nutrition or social stuff or ordering food or whatever it might be. We'll get those addressed. Those will be every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern probably. And the other big part of this is the Facebook accountability group. So everyone else is going to be in a Facebook group together. You'll be in there to stay motivated, get support, connect with other members. And then each week we're going to have weekly worksheets and action steps, things for you to actually do. I've mentioned that Sunday, that accountability session, how important it is to have that little check-in with yourself. That's what these weekly worksheets and action steps are going to give for you. And I hope that the webinars on Sunday night are going to make them even easier to make time for, to carve out, make sure you actually do this check-in, see how you're doing. Here are the actual topics that we're going to cover in there. A lot of it are the topics that I mentioned here, but we're just going to go into way more depth. So something like meal planning, nutrition, social aspects, eating out and traveling, all things that I kind of touched on here a little bit. But instead of spending 5 or 10 minutes on those topics, we'll be able to go through an entire webinar about that, along with lots of Q&A, as I mentioned. But in bold here, what I have, the very most important thing to this thing is that it is something we are co-creating together. I've never done anything like this. Everything I've done so far has been products that I put out, right? Ebooks that you read, and I've put it all together in advance. You read it, you go do the marathon, do the half marathon. That's how it's been in the past. This is new. This is something that we're doing together. It's a challenge. It's a 30-day challenge with a start date and an end date, something that we all do together. It's not something, I mean, although you could certainly go look at this 3 months from now if you wanted to join now and not use it for 3 months, but really the way it's designed to be used is real time, all in it together. So the great thing about this is once you sign up, you'll get a survey that's going to ask you where are your concerns? What's specific about your situation where you think you'd like to get this question answered and have us address this? Look at all that stuff along with answering the actual individual questions in some of these Q&A sessions. I'm going to look at the ones and say, like, if one area is huge and everyone needs to know about, I don't know, the diet for sports. How does this diet work with sports? If everyone needs to know about that, or a huge part of the people in the challenge need to know about that, well, then I'm going to carve out a lot of time for that on one of the webinars. And maybe social aspects will get pushed down, and that will become of primary importance. So these are the ideas. These are the things that I kind of identified as the most important potential stumbling blocks, the things that you really need to know about. But, I'm not you, and I don't know exactly what you need. So that's what joining is going to give you. It's going to give you the chance to help shape the content of these webinars that we'll do every Sunday. Recordings, of course, will be available just like they will for this, by the way. I mentioned a bunch of situations. Is it right for you? It depends. If you're in one of these situations, you're not. As I said before several times, if you're like the preachy militant type who wants to dive in and wants to, be super vocal and visible about this message, I admire you for that, and I'm really happy there are people like you in the world, but this is not for you. You're not going to like the way that I teach stuff. I'm sure of it. If the things I've been saying have been resonating with you, though, and you like this smaller steps approach, you like the laid back kind of low key approach, then I think there's a very good chance this is right for you. As I mentioned, we've got all these different situations that will be covered. The omnivore who wants to go vegan, that was that first plan. We've got the vegetarian who wants to go full vegan. That was that second plan that I showed there. Then there's these other sort of sub cases, or you've tried going vegan, but you just can't stick with it. And kind of a very similar one to that is you've tried it before, or you've wanted to do it for a long time, but you've just never actually said, okay, go. You've never made that commitment and said, here's when I'm doing it. Here's the challenge I'm going to do. And I'm going to start this day, and I'm going to go until this day. And when I get there, and only when I get there, will I reconsider whether this is the right thing for me to do or not. Finally, you're curious about going vegetarian or vegan at some point, and you just want to see what it's like. This was me after I was vegetarian for a while. I really wanted to know about vegan. I was inspired by it, but I just thought I wasn't quite ready to do it. So what I did was myself a 30-day challenge where I was vegan for 30 days, did it, enjoyed it, and got to the end of the 30 days and said, I'm not quite ready to be vegan yet. What I wonder now is, had I actually gone with a smaller steps, gradual approach to it, if that would have gotten me there sooner, instead of saying, I'm jumping from vegetarian to vegan on this day, and I'm sticking with that for 30 days no matter what. That's what I did. I got to the end and I said, this is fun, but I'm not quite ready to do this yet. And it took me 3 or 4 months after that until I finally actually became fully vegan, and I got there gradually over time. So I hope you'll join us for this 30-day challenge. It's been great doing this webinar. This is the next step. This is where I will be there to metaphorically hold your hand and really help you out, kind of be your partner in this journey, be your coach, if you will let me be that. It's $30, which is $1 a day. I think as far as an investment in your health goes, I think it's a great thing. And I know, when I, like I said, if you've had trouble actually sticking with something, maybe you've said, I'm going to start it on this day, but then that day comes and it doesn't. For me, actually making a commitment, a tangible commitment like this sort of thing would be, it just makes you more serious about it. And it just kind of solves that problem of, I really want to do this, but it's not quite the right time and I'm not going to do it. And then that, the start date gets moved back and then gets moved back. And then eventually the desire kind of fades and it never happens. So anyway, there's a little more information at nomeatathlete.com/join, as in join the challenge. You won't be able to click this link, I don't believe, in your screen, but just type it in, nomeatathlete.com/join, and you will find all the details about the challenge there. Okay, so I have talked for a full hour, went a little bit longer than I had planned, but that's okay. Now it is Q&A time, and I've got some questions that have come in, so let me get out of my full screen mode here so you can see me again. And I hope I don't break it here. All right, hello, I am back. I got a few questions. So this one's from Christina. What food should be restricted when weight loss is the first goal of a whole foods plant-based diet? Great question, Christina. And my wife just went through this very thing. So one thing I would suggest to you is check out our podcast episode on that topic after this is done. But I can tell you first the thing, and this is, I'm not saying you need to do this to go vegan by any means. And in fact, if you're first going vegan, maybe this isn't the first thing you should do because it makes it really hard. But once you're comfortable being vegan, I would say what you should do is eliminate oil. You don't want oil in your diet for weight loss because it's a tremendous amount of calories in a very small amount of space. So it's 4,000 calories per pound, whereas fruits and vegetables are more like between 1 and 200 and maybe up to 400 calories per pound. So that's one to eliminate for sure, even if it's something that seems healthy like olive oil. If you can't eliminate it, just reduce it drastically. Use a teaspoon of it instead of a tablespoon. Doug and I mentioned on the podcast today, if you heat up a pan first, put just a few drops of oil in there, it will spread over the whole pan and you will be able to do the job that oil does for most dishes. So that would be the first thing that I would eliminate for the purpose of weight loss, even on a vegan diet. Nuts would be the next. I think nuts are wonderfully healthy food. I would not want you to eliminate them for a long time, but they are a very calorically dense foods. They are more like 2,000 calories per pound, I believe, maybe some getting up to 3,000. That's a lot of calories in a very small space. It's quite easy to overeat nuts. So during a weight loss period, I would remove those. And then after you've achieved your weight goal, hopefully within 6 or 8 weeks, I'd reintroduce them into your diet. And the final one that I would consider dropping just during a weight loss phase, another very, very healthy food, is avocado. Just because it's very fatty, contains a lot of calories compared to other fruits and vegetables. You can get by without that fat for a period of time. And I think it's a good thing to do that if you want to lose weight. But not at all am I saying you should get rid of avocados out of your diet. Very, very healthy food, something I eat as often as I can, in fact, because weight loss is not my goal, as you can see. Weight keeping on is my goal. All right, next question here. And by the way, if you've got any questions, ask them about either the challenge or any other questions about going vegan. I'm happy to answer them here. All right, let's see. Richard says, where can we find recipes to replace the animal foods we are removing? Recommendations for cookbooks or sites? Okay, so Richard, I guess what you're asking there is what are the best vegan and vegetarian websites and books? If you're starting out, this is kind of not related to the small steps thing. This is just good vegan and vegetarian recipes. She Glows, it's OH She Glows. You could even Google those 3 words, She Glows. Angela Liddon, she's very good, has lots and lots of good stuff. Some of it is somewhat indulgent, but it's also pretty healthy and mostly whole food, all vegan, of course. That's a good one. Of course, there's the nomeatathlete.com. There are the recipes on there. A lot of those you'll find are from when I was first experimenting with this diet. There are even some fish recipes on there. If you look back, I don't think they're in the recipes page anymore, but if you Google them, you would probably find them. But there are lots that have cheese and probably some eggs and other dairy in there, because No Meat Athlete has been around ever since I started making this transition. So you can see my entire progress there, and the recipes I haven't deleted or anything, because I think they are helpful for situations like this. Other good ones. Let's see. I really like Italian cooking, and I think I have a Mario Batali book. A lot of his stuff is really easy to use because he doesn't use a lot of butter. A lot of Italian stuff is based on olive oil, depending on what region of Italy the cooking is from. But that's sort of easy because you can just often omit the meat from a pasta dish and just put some beans in instead. That works very well, and in fact, many Italian dishes are based on the combination of pasta and beans. So that works very well. Post-Punk Kitchen is Isa Chandra Moskowitz's site, which has lots of really good vegan recipes. Some of them are just so good and delicious that, that it's hard for me to say that they're super healthy, because some of them do have a lot of oil. Some of them do rely on seitan a lot, which is a wheat gluten product that sort of simulates meat, especially chicken. But you could go to one of those sites and do that. And by all means, like I said, during this challenge period, I would suggest you do things like that frequently. That maybe it's not quite as healthy as you want to be eating long term, if that's one of your big goals. But if it's going to help you last through the challenge, a couple times a week, you do a fairly decadent vegan meal, by all means, go for it. Another good idea, and I only just thought of this now, is you could look at any of these vegan or vegetarian sites that I'm mentioning, and that first week you could add chicken to the dish. I don't know that the original author of the recipe would be that excited about hearing that that's how it was, but not everybody agrees with this approach, and I think this is a great approach, and that'd be a great thing to do just as you're on your way. And then it'd be neat to see the same recipe. If you find one that you like when it has chicken in it, it'd be kind of interesting to see what happens as it evolves, and you add shrimp instead of chicken, and then finally there's no more shrimp, and then finally there's no more cheese on it, and it's a vegan recipe now, as it was originally intended to be. That could work quite well as well. Others, Yum Universe is a really good one of my favorites. Heather Crosby, that's gluten-free. So again, I wouldn't encourage you to go super far with that unless you have a big reason to avoid gluten. You want to minimize the size of the steps, size of the chunks that we're biting off here. But go with that, and if those are easy and they look good to you, then do them. But if you'd rather use regular pasta than rice pasta, like she might recommend, then do the regular pasta, even though it has gluten in it, assuming you can handle the gluten. In other words, the theme is don't try to do drastic changes. I don't want you to do that. By all means, get there within a few months, even a few weeks, but I just don't want you to bite off more than you can chew, so to speak. All right, let's see. I've got time for a few more here. What does a day menu look like for you? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, metabolic. I don't know quite what. Oh, shoot, I just lost that one. Anyway, I can answer the breakfast, lunch, dinner. Typical breakfast for me is a smoothie. If I'm not going to be actually putting something into a smoothie, then just nuts and seeds. Fruits and nuts or fruits and seeds works very well. So that's a very typical breakfast for me. Lunch is often leftovers from dinner the night before. And then dinner is going to be a bunch of the recipes I've talked about. Lots and lots of pasta with beans, lots of rice and beans, many giant salads, which often become meals when I put fruits. If I put beans on them, they become a meal. Usually a kind of a nut-based dressing, like a tahini-based dressing. Snacks for me, as I said, are fruits or hummus dipped in, or vegetables dipped in hummus. Very, very typical day for me. And I also do lots of stuff with what was I gonna say? Lots of trail mix, very common snack for me. Pitas dipped in hummus. I'm not against bread and gluten by any means. All for that. So that's just kind of a quick typical day, but it's hard. We actually put out a podcast about that a few weeks ago. So look at No Meat Athlete Radio on iTunes. Sorry that I'm talking fast here. I'm just trying to fly through these questions and get as many answered as I can. Do I take vitamin B12 and D supplements? Let me just close this door because it's open door more because it's getting super hot in here. I do take vitamin B12. I believe it is important for vegans to take it, and I think it's hard to be healthy without it. You will last for a few years with your supply of B12 in most cases when you go vegan, but I don't think it's the best thing to try to do that for too long. I think it's just, there are foods that are vegan for sure that are fortified with B12. You can get it that way. I just don't think it's that reliable. You don't know for sure the amounts you're getting or the quality, the type you're getting. I'd much rather get it from a supplement, know that I was getting what I needed. Let's see. Do you agree that you should supplement these two? Yeah, vitamin D, I think that's fine. I take a multivitamin, has D in it as well as B12. So that has what I need and works for me. Let's see. Okay, what can I substitute dairy yogurt with? Someone says, Joyce. There's soy yogurt, which is perfect. I've seen lots of recipes for making, let's see, plant yogurt, fermented foods, and capsules don't work. Okay. Let's see. I don't know. I wish I knew why those didn't work in particular, because that might help me figure out other options. I don't know. I mean, like a cashew type of cheese works really well. Just soak some cashews overnight. You can find plenty of cashew cheese recipes in my book or all over the internet. Soak them overnight and blend them in a high-speed blender. You get a very creamy substance that's a lot like a cheesy sauce or cheesy spread. That works quite well. I don't know at all that it would work as a yogurt substitute, but I think it sort of depends on what you're trying to do. You certainly wouldn't want to eat a cup of that every day. So yeah, I don't know. The plant yogurts are what I would recommend, and I would look for different sources, different yogurts based on something that works for you. Okay, let's see. Another one about B12 from you. So someone's asking, Susan is asking about how important B12 is from nutritional yeast. So nutritional yeast is a food that's a lot of vegans eat, and it is fortified with B12. It doesn't have it naturally occurring in it. And to me, I just don't trust the amounts that it's going to be consistent, and I don't trust myself that I'm consistently going to eat the same amount of nutritional yeast every day, or that I can count on myself to actually to eat that nutritional yeast every day. I'd be worried that I'd go on vacation and totally forget about it, go months without having nutritional yeast, and I don't like. I'd rather just know that once a day I take a supplement, and that works pretty well. Supplement, by the way, is just a multivitamin. It's very, very easy to do. It's a simple pill you swallow. Okay, let's see. So Rebecca says, looking for my phone here, that Doug is sending me a few of the questions because I'm kind of running low on time. I just want to make sure I get the ones that will help the most people. Rebecca says, I struggle with bloating and foods that are high fiber. How long before the body adapts? I don't have a good answer to exactly how long it takes to adapt. I would guess 6 to 8 weeks is probably the point where once you're past that, your body has adapted, and it's not going to change all that much more in large amounts after 6 to 8 weeks are up. That's just a total guess based on my experience and what I've seen with people. But I do think the small steps approach is going to really help you. You're not drastically suddenly putting all this fiber into your diet because you're not drastically changing your diet that much. All you're changing is you're not having the first week, assuming you're on the omnivore to vegan plan. All you're changing is that you're not having beef and pork in your meals, and maybe you're having chicken instead. So the amount of fiber you're taking in probably isn't changing at all that first week. I would encourage you now and then to try some vegetarian or vegan meals in those early weeks, but it's not that huge a deal. I mean, it's not going to be changing your fiber content that much if 1 or 2 days a week, or even a few more than that, you're actually having a higher fiber meal. So I think small steps, that's another great thing, another great benefit of small steps. Okay. So what food groups do I eat to gain weight as a vegan? That's a good question. In that case, depending on your philosophies around whole foods and how important it is for you to gain weight now, kind of balancing that against long-term health, you could eat the oils, the avocados, the nuts. You'll be loading up on calories then, and those are going to be your big weight gainer foods. Others that aren't quite so high in calories but are still very good and are way more whole foods than, say, oil, or something like sweet potatoes. I think you're going to be in the 600 to 800 calories per pound range there. So just look at caloric density. Look up caloric density as a Google search, and you'll find charts of foods that are based on, and it says how dense they are in calories. Also, there's a podcast episode we did with Robert Cheek where he talks about that exact thing, what food groups he's eating, and also the idea of how to figure out exactly how many calories you do need to be eating per day to hit a weight gain goal, and then talks about kind of writing down things and making sure every day you are hitting that goal. Okay. Where can we find recipes to replace foods that we were? Oh, so I got this one. That's from Richard. Why is the protein demand different for vegans and vegetarians than meat eaters? Great question. That's something that I meant to say and I totally forgot. It is not different for vegetarians and vegans than meat eaters. It's just, I think that people who are vegetarian and vegan are more open to the idea that maybe we don't need quite so much as people have told us for so long, and people often who are paying money or being paid money to say that message. Chris Carmichael is the guy whose book I followed when I was training to qualify for Boston. That was my nutrition manual. He was an omnivore. Lance Armstrong was an omnivore. He recommended 65% carbohydrate, 12% protein, and the rest fat. 12% protein, very, very easy to get on a plant-based diet. And he was talking about omnivores. He was talking about the optimal diet for endurance athletes, period. Not whether you were vegetarian or omnivore or what. Just that was his version of the optimal diet. So it's not that vegetarians need less at all. It's just I think that vegetarians are willing to try less than what the typical mainstream idea of how much we need is. Okay. The ketogenic diet question. Let's see what we got here. My family needs to follow a ketogenic diet. What do you recommend on how to follow a vegan lifestyle on ketogenic, high-fat, low-carb diet? In all honesty, to be fair, I don't have a good answer to that at all. I don't really know. I mean, it's very hard to eat low-carb as a plant-based diet, on a plant-based diet. And I mean, high-fat you can do. That's not a problem. You can eat plenty of oil. Just add more oil to your food and you'll get plenty of fat. That's not hard. But if you want to get the lower carbs, kind of difficult because you're then cutting out a lot of fruits. You're cutting out a lot of grains. A lot of the things that your meals are based on, beans, you're kind of cutting that out. A lot of things that meals are based on suddenly are gone, and that's not an easy thing. So I don't know that much. If you Google vegetarian or vegan ketogenic diet, you will probably find some specific answers to that. I unfortunately don't have them. I do have an article on my site, and actually 2 others after that, about paleo vegetarian, paleo vegan. So if you Google no meat athlete, paleo vegetarian, paleo vegan, then you will probably find some good things there. Okay, how do I feel about juicing? This is from Tracy. I think juicing is okay, might be useful as a weight loss tool, but I don't think it's a good long-term thing. I'm really, really into whole food eating, and juice is not a whole food. Juice is separated from the fiber and the pulp that's in vegetables and fruits. So when you remove that juice, I think you're allowing your body to take in way more of the sugar and also way more of the vitamins and minerals. That's one of the ideas behind juicing. You're allowing yourself to take in way more of that than you otherwise would if it was in the fruit, right? So if you were to try to eat 5 pounds of apples, it'd be very difficult for you to do that in one sitting. To drink the juice of 5 pounds of apples, though, I think is doable. I don't know how much it would be. It would be, maybe a half a blender full or something like that. And you could get that down if you had to. It's a lot of sugar you can take in. People will argue it's a lot of vitamins. Sure, that's great. But I think whole foods are the way to go in general when it comes to health. So I'm not a huge fan of juicing. I like it, targeted use for athletics around before, during, after workouts. Juice is wonderful then because you want that sugar. The concentration of it is good and the speed of it getting to your bloodstream is good. So it's a good thing then, but otherwise I wouldn't do it as a day in, day out kind of thing. Okay, let's see. Let's get a few more here before we sign off. More about B12, more about protein. I'm sorry if I'm skipping some of these. What are great protein sources, someone asks. I mentioned protein powder. That's a great protein source, of course. But it's not one of my favorites because often it's not very whole food. And it's just not, I don't know, to me, I want to eat what's kind of from the earth, what's natural, what's there. And protein powder doesn't really fit that bill. But that's going to be your most efficient protein source as far as lots of protein, little else. Seitan, made out of wheat gluten, so a lot of people won't like it. It's delicious as a chicken substitute. That has lots of protein. Tofu and tempeh do as well, but so do all other beans if you don't like soy. So beans are a big one. That's probably my favorite go-to protein source. Nuts as well, but they come with some fat, so you got to watch it. It's hard to use them as your only protein source. There are many, many more. Okay, let's see. I do see we have some signups coming up for the challenge. That is awesome. I'm really happy to have you in here, and I think this is going to be a great 30 days. We're going to get started this coming Sunday, and by the way, that is the deadline, because once we start, then there's no sense in joining. So that's the deadline there, and it is nomeatathlete.com/join. I know I don't have the slide up now, I think that's probably pretty bad webinar practice to not have that link up all the time, but that's what it is. NoMeatAthlete.com/join. Okay, I'm really rushing through here, so I'm relying on my text messages where Doug has picked a few for me to answer. I'm going to open this door a little more one more time, just because it's super hot. All right. Crystal has said she's allergic to soy. Will that work? Yes, you do not have to eat soy on this diet at all, as I just mentioned. Tofu, tempeh, they are really nice, good foods. A lot of recipes are based on them. They're good protein sources, but you do not have to have them in your diet at all. There are plenty and plenty of vegetarian recipes, vegan recipes that don't have any soy. There are plenty of entire books written without soy in them. So no, you do not have to have soy in your diet. That's totally fine. It's a bean like any other, has some more protein and more fat than other beans, but otherwise, I mean, you can get by with beans. Okay, let me take just a couple more. Thank you for those of you who are hanging in here. I realize I'm going later than I said, and I also apologize that I am talking so rapidly and nervously right now because I am just rushing through questions. Oh, one more thing about how can I gain weight as a vegan? I see Doug has sent me that one. I don't know if it's the same one about what food should I eat as a vegan. The one that was from SDA President, is her name on Google. But another crucial thing, if you want to gain weight on any diet, is be careful with how many calories you're burning, right? So exercise is a good thing for health. You don't want to eliminate all exercise, but I'd watch out with long runs, like trying to train for a marathon and gain weight. Not a good combination. Not likely that it's going to work very well. Similarly, trying to burn fat and gain weight at the exact same time is nearly impossible for most people who don't have the best genetics in the world, as I certainly don't. So for me, it took stopping running for a while and eating lots of high calorie foods for me to actually gain weight. So just like it's okay to stop, eating nuts, which are a great food, for a while you're trying to lose weight, it's totally fine to stop running for a little while if you're trying to put on weight. Now, once you kind of want to return to the normal lifestyle, you've got to worry about maintenance, sure. So you have another challenge then, but it's totally fine to make these short little changes as long as you do eventually come back. All right, Anthony says, I don't like fruits and salads, but I like beans, veggies, and grains. Will it work? Yes, of course it'll work. I mean, there's no one vegan diet that works and the others don't. Some are going to be more difficult than others, but you can always make it work almost surely. Without fruits, I mean, it's a shame to not have fruits because fruits are really good for you and they provide some really high quality calories. I would hope that you could find a way to work some fruits into your diet. But there's no reason. It's exactly the same as if you were an omnivore and didn't like fruits. I would tell you, I hope you can find some sort of way to work fruits into your diet because they're really good for you, very protective in the long term against disease. Not liking salads, but liking veggies, that's totally fine. I mean, it's good. You want some of your veggies to be raw. In fact, I think about half of your vegetables should be raw if you can make them that way. But you can have raw veggies dipped in hummus and don't consider that a salad. That's totally good. Beans, veggies, grains. I mean, that's a typical meal for me. A grain, a green, and a bean is a thing I coined a long time ago, which Trader Joe's then stole from me and put on their frozen something. I don't know. In fact, I don't know if they stole it, but I did make it up first. But a meal that is a bean and a grain cooked together and a green tossed in at the end. Perfect, typical meal. Takes one pot, very easy cleanup, packs in nutrition, tastes good if you put certain seasonings on it. You can make it fit different styles of food, whatever you're in the mood for that night. But a grain, a bean, if you Google that phrase, you will find some stuff from me on it. So yes, good one there. Let's see. Let me answer a couple more. Don't forget, nomeatathlete.com/join is where you go to figure out more about the 30-day challenge. And I'm going to go ahead and put that slide up here and just read the rest from my cell phone. I do see someone recommended Isa Chandra Moskowitz's book, Appetite for Reduction. I absolutely love that book. It's one of my very favorites that I had as soon as I went vegan. I was using that book. It is, Matt Resigno is the co-author of that. He's also the co-author of my book. So that's my connection to Isa there. But I love that book. The black bean tacos with green salsa verde, I guess it's called, are delicious. Just simply best tacos I've ever had, perhaps, that are vegan. Angela made buffalo chicken dish for me. Haha, I think it was hummus. Yeah, so what that was, Rebecca, was Angela at Oshi Glows reviewed my book, No Meat Athlete, and made the buffalo hummus recipe from that book and put it on there, which is funny. I don't know if she knew about my affinity for buffalo chicken wings back in the day. I think I told the story in the book, perhaps, so maybe she did. But she didn't make any chicken, or she just she just made my buffalo hummus recipe and reviewed it, which is a very, very nice review, and wonderful to be on her site. Okay, let me stick this back up here one more time, just for anyone who has not yet seen it. And this is where you go to join the 30-day challenge, which will be starting on Sunday, which I am really, really excited about, because it's that we'll have way more time. I won't have to plow through questions like this, and we can answer things at a reasonable pace. Let's see what we got here, if I can remember how to show my screen. Okay, I'm gonna grab the rest of these from my phone. The dog has tested me. Joyce says, what's a good vegan post-run meal? Great question, Joyce. That's a very common one I get. My strategy for post-workout nutrition is during the 15 to 25 minute window after your workout, you want, and even sooner if you can do it, so 0 to 25 minutes if you want. That's when you want the sugar. You want to replenish that muscle glycogen. So fruit juices are great. Fruits are great if you don't have juice. Sports drinks work perfectly fine. Get ones that are vegan, but most of them are. You can get specifically made recovery drinks that have the perfect 4 or 5 to 1 carbohydrate to protein ratio. So 5 grams of carbohydrate per 1 gram of protein is the ideal immediate post-workout ratio. For me, white bread, white rice, these foods that I normally would never eat during most days. I can't say I would never eat white rice, but rarely do I eat white breads and things that are stripped of the fiber and protein. But right after a workout is not only have you earned them by working hard, your body is ready for those foods, those immediate replacing of carbohydrates. Usually we avoid those because we want our body to do work to digest our food. So we don't want stuff that's already been partially digested for us by, turning into white flour. But right after a workout, when you don't want your body to have to deal with that, all you want your body to do at that point is focus on recovering, rebuilding muscle. You want to jumpstart that process. White bread, white rice works perfectly fine immediately afterwards. But then, and this is important, don't skip this part, an hour later, maybe even up to an hour and a half to 2 hours later, eat a bigger, higher protein meal. For me, rice and beans is really good. If I can get a vegan pizza, maybe with like a cashew cheese type of sauce, where it's not cheese, of course, but a cashew spread on there that's like cheese, deliver some protein, some fat, just a bigger meal, higher protein than that original one that was mostly carbohydrate. And pretty normal foods, right? Rice and beans, or a pasta dish with some beans in it, just your normal big dinner, go for that. All right, good question. Okay, and I think that's it. Okay, that is what we've got. I've gone about a half hour longer than I planned to. I apologize for that. Hopefully you got some value out of the Q&A session, even though it was rather frantic. Appreciate it. I hope you will join us for the 30-day challenge. It is nomeatathlete.com/join. There will be plenty of opportunities there to answer these questions. As I said, this webinar gave you what you need to go vegan. I'm not trying to say you need to join this if you want to go vegan. By all means, no, go vegan if you want. I mean, that's what I really want from this. However, there's this offer where I'm happy to go along with you, hold your hand. As I don't really like to say that because I think you can be more empowered than that. But to be along for the ride with you, answering questions, helping you make this transition as easy as possible to maximize the chances that it lasts. Because for me, yes, I want people to try it, but what I want is for people to stick with it, right? That's the point of trying it at all for most people, is to stick with it. I want to maximize the chances of that happening. We'll have the Sunday things that are the weekly check-in that I said was so important. Sunday can be that, because we'll do an hour long or probably a 2 hour long once we get some Q&A in there. That's at a slower pace. Once we get that in, it could be very long webinars, but we'll make them too long for you, of course. But you've got that on Sunday. You've got the Facebook accountability groups to build the accountability, the other really important thing that I mentioned. And then, of course, you've got worksheets and next actions and things like that that will provide, what to do for your Sunday check-in and stuff like that. So nomeatathlete.com/join is where that all is. Sunday, August 23rd is the deadline. Again, I really appreciate you showing up for this webinar. I really appreciate that you are this interested in becoming vegan. So thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to talk to you soon.